Huddle up, dads. If your kids are whining, screaming, and throwing tantrums to get what they want, well then I have some tough love for you. You've probably coached your kids to act in that manner just as I did when I first became a father. You see, it's the easiest trap in the world to fall into, so don't beat yourself up about it. But in this video, we're going to talk about why we've coached our kids this way. We're going to talk about how we can fix it and what to do in the worst case scenario where no is ultimately the answer. So I want you to picture this. A scenario that we've all been in a million times. We're trying to rush out the door to get to somewhere on time. We're out in public and we're not trying to cause a scene, but your child wants something and they ask you if they can have it. And the answer is no. And once they hear that two-letter word, the whining starts to escalate. And this is kind of what we have taught our kids, is that they have learned that when they ask for something and they don't get what they want, then by escalating, they can eventually get to the point where you are going to break and give in to their demands and they're going to get what they want. It is nothing malicious that they're doing. This is just what they have learned and what they have been coached to do. Now, as a father of 3, I've done this more times than I care to admit. But right now, my youngest is the one that gets me a lot still. She'll come up to me in her sweetest little voice and say, "Daddy, can I have a piece of candy?" And she is a very picky eater, and so we do our best not to try to give her a bunch of junk food, throughout the day. And so I tell her no. And then the escalation starts. She says, "But Daddy, I want one." And then I tell her no again. And at that point, she has learned from me that she needs to escalate further. And so she starts the whining and crying and I want one, right? And we've all been there. And maybe it was a long day at work. Maybe we're stressed. Maybe we're trying to do a million other things. Or maybe we're out in public and we're embarrassed. And so when that whining starts, we give in and I hand over the candy. We've all done it. It's nothing that we're doing that is with bad intention. We're just trying to move along. And yeah, of course, we get the short-term win, right? The whining stops. They've got what they wanted. They're happy. You get to move on with whatever it is that you were doing. But in the end, this is a losing play because over the long run, you are ingraining more and more in your child that whining, tantrums, and screaming and yelling is getting them exactly what they want. But here's the great news. If this habit and behavior can be learned, it also means that a new behavior can be learned to replace it. And so I'm going to walk us through the steps that we need to take as parents to go ahead and overcome this and get our children to act more calmly and not throw tantrums as much. And so the first step is to stop rewarding the negative behavior that you're trying to get rid of. Now, when the whining or whatever negative behavior it is that you're trying to eliminate from your child begins, you need to immediately go into a neutral state. By going into a neutral state, you're basically showing your child that their actions are not controlling what you are going to do. And so that means a neutral look on your face, neutral body language. It means no negotiating with your kid. It means no negative interactions like yelling at them or telling them to stop it or knock it off or anything like that. You're just completely neutral. Now, as a fair warning, when you first do this, this is going to result in the most epic yelling, screaming, or tantrums that you've ever seen. And the reason why is because everything they've learned up to this point in their life tells them that when they throw these tantrums, they're going to get what they want eventually because that's what's going to happen to get them to stop, and then they get what they want, and then you obviously have ended the tantrum. But by going into this re-coaching kind of progress that we're talking about here, you are essentially breaking the mold. You're telling them that their actions and the way they're acting is no longer going to get them what they want, but their brain doesn't really understand that. It's not wired that way yet. And so you have to break that connectivity. And so basically what it does is it keeps escalating. It starts at a 1 and asks, "Dad, can I have a piece of candy?" No. Okay, let's escalate up to a 5. Well, that didn't work. Let's go up to an 8. Let's go up to a 10. And by a 10, we've always gotten what we want. Well, now they're going to crank it all the way up to 11, all right? And so these are going to be the most epic meltdowns that you've ever seen. And I can speak to this firsthand because my own children have done this when we have realized that we have created a situation that, we really didn't want with the screaming and the whining and the complaining. And so we had to break the mold. And my children, just like your children will do the same, are going to just go down the path that they have learned up to that point. And so you have to brace yourself that this is going to happen for the first, few times that you kind of go neutral and you don't give give in to what they want. And so obviously, if you got big things coming up, maybe this isn't the best time to start implementing this process. But if you're going to be at home for a while, like maybe a long weekend or something like that, maybe this might be a good time to start. So even though you're not negotiating with your child at this point, you need to make sure that you do give them some directive, right? So they need to know what it is that they have to do in order to get what they want. Now, deep down, their brain won't believe them, and maybe they're not really going to hear you because they're in the middle of a tantrum, but you have to say in a neutral voice something along the lines of, I don't respond to whining, or try again in a calm voice. But in doing these things, you've given them the directive, but then you need to disengage. And at that point, you need to remain silent. And no matter what they say, you need to kind of just ignore them, maybe even act like they're not there until they calm down. And once they calm down, we move into step 2, which is positive reinforcement. After your kids have cranked it all the way up to 11, and what will seem like an eternity, but in actuality will probably only be about 5 or 10 minutes, or if this is the first or second time that you've done it, maybe 15 minutes. Your kids are going to start running out of energy. They're going to start getting tired from all this screaming, and I mean, it's just a lot of energy spent, and they're going to get worn out. And so what's going to happen over the course of this outburst is that you're going to probably hear their ask of you change. So instead of, like it was started maybe for a piece of candy or whatever it was, it's going to change to something much simpler, like maybe, Daddy, just answer me, or answer my question, or Daddy, hold me, or whatever. And it's important that you continue to be neutral and you continue to hold firm on not acknowledging the behavior, even though it seems to be calming down. But they're still probably trying to give their max effort of complaining and whining. They just have run out of energy. And so what you need to make sure you do, though, is that you're ready to positively reinforce the good behavior. And so when you judge that they are legitimately trying to calm down, which, that might be kind of a sobbing kind of, Daddy, please, can you answer my question? And they've done it in a kind of calmish voice, and you feel like it's a good attempt on their part. You need to try to instantly give them whatever it is that they're asking, because that is the start of positively reinforcing the good behavior. And this is the first step towards kind of rewiring their brain to start making the connection that, hey, throwing a tantrum isn't getting me what I want. What is getting me what I want is when I asked in a calm voice. Okay. Now, it's not going to be a magic, switch that you're just going to flip and that's going to work overnight. It is something that is going to take a lot of time and effort. We're talking about a couple of weeks, maybe, depending on how consistent you are with it, a few weeks. But that is something that needs persistency and consistency. And so that leads me into my next point. You need to make sure that the entire team of caregivers that takes care of your child is on board with this. If you have a grandmother that comes over and watches the kids, she has to be on board. If you have daycare workers, they have to be on board. Babysitters, your spouse, anybody who is involved in caring for this child needs to be on board, because if you are the only one that is trying to consistently apply this, then they're never going to actually learn to change their behavior. What they're going to learn is that if they continue to do the outburst, they're going to get what they want from everybody else in the world around them. And then their brain is never going to kind of process that they need a change around you only. And so they're just going to continue to have bigger and bigger meltdowns with you. And so you're not going to change their behavior, and all you're going to do is experience, bigger meltdowns. So you have to make sure that everybody is on board with this. And so it might mean that you want to do this and implement it over maybe a long weekend or something like that. You don't want to do it, maybe just one random weekday where you're going to be with them for a few hours and they're going to go off to the daycare, and then grandma's going to be watching them over the weekend. You want to be able to be consistent with it. And so whatever you need to do to make sure that happens, that is a very, very important point. But let's circle back to giving that positive reinforcement. So once they've taken it down a couple notches, as I've already said, you want to make sure that you try to immediately give them what they want. But in doing so, while you're giving them what they want, make sure you get down on their eye level, make eye contact with them in a kind of very neutral, kind of loving way, and tell them exactly why they are getting what they want. And so it could be something like, I really appreciate how you asked so nicely for this piece of candy, or I really appreciate how nicely you asked me to answer your question. What is it that you want me to answer? And in doing so, you're teaching them the first steps of understanding that if they want something, they need to ask in a different manner. They need to ask politely. Now, this also brings a huge caveat with it as well. There might be times where your child is going to ask you for something that, you really don't care if they have it. It's just kind of inconvenient or whatever. But especially if they're younger, you need to kind of make sure that when they ask nicely, you give them what they want if you're going to give it to them anyway. Because if you hold off and you say, hold on 1 second while I finish this, or if you say, no, not right now, then that's going to induce the whining. And then if you're going to give it to them anyway, eventually you give it to them, and that just kind of reinforces the idea of that whining gets what you want. So you got to be careful there when you're starting this process, that you have to make sure that you give them the stuff that they want when they do what it is that you want them to do, which is ask nicely, ask calmly, not throw tantrums and fits and things like that. Now, I hear you. What if the answer is going to be no matter how nice they ask, because they're asking for something that's unreasonable or not safe or whatever other reason that you know that it's a definitive no answer? Well, that's going to happen. It comes up in life all the time. And so you have to be able to handle that situation as well. And so I'll just give you an example of how you can kind of walk through this. So maybe you're about to have dinner and they ask for ice cream about 10 minutes before dinner time. Of course, we don't want to give them that because they're going to, essentially spoil their dinner. And so you're going to tell them no. But when you do that, you need to make sure that you explain why the answer is no. And depending on the age of your child, and if they're in a good mood or a thinking kind of mood, they're going to understand what you're doing. Now, this is not going to ward off the tantrum necessarily, because the kid probably wants ice cream, like my kids, of course, sometimes do. And so when they want that, they're going to maybe go to escalate, but you want to try to curb that. And so the way you can do that is by trying to return some sense of control to the kid. And the way you do that is by offering them choices that you as a parent are okay with. And so then they get to pick one of two choices that you're fine with, and that makes them feel like they're in control. So maybe if they ask for the ice cream 10 minutes before, you tell them no, you explain why they can't have ice cream, and then you offer them an alternative that is suitable to you. So maybe you say something like, no, we can't have ice cream, it's just about dinner time, we don't want to ruin our dinner, but would you rather have some apple slices or orange slices? Because maybe we're planning on giving them fruit anyway for their dinner, and so now they're just having part of their dinner early to kind of hold them over while the rest of it finishes up. And if that works, great, but sometimes maybe the kid is tired, or maybe your kid is just having a bad day, and the tantrum is going to take place anyway. So in this situation, they're going to say, I don't want apples, I don't want oranges, I want ice cream, right? And so they're beginning to escalate. And so you need to acknowledge their frustration, and then you just need to go back to the beginning of this whole video. Go to step one and go neutral, and just tell them exactly that you don't, respond to this type of behavior or whatever it is. They'll probably continue to escalate because they're clearly in a bad mood, or they're very tired, or whatever the situation is. And then you need to go completely neutral. And again, I'm going to emphasize, you have to resist the urge to even give them negative reinforcement, yelling at them, telling them to knock it off, or any of those type of things, because in doing so, that attention is sometimes a reward in itself, because they felt like they won because they got you to act out and they kind of controlled your behavior in their mind. And so you want to avoid that at all costs as well. And, additionally, talking to a child when they're having a meltdown is like throwing gasoline on open fire. It's not going to end well for anybody involved. It's going to probably escalate them even further, because they're not in a situation to think rationally. And you're in a situation where your tension is rising. You can feel the stress and, the I can't believe this is happening again feeling, and just getting so stressed out. And so nobody is winning in this situation. So it's best to just kind of ignore it. Yes, it is annoying to have a kid throwing a tantrum in your kitchen or your living room, but in doing this, if you can stick with it, you're going to have a much better situation with your children in the future, and that is something that is a win for everybody. And if you would like more real-life parenting stuff, not from a book or anything like that, but real-life experience from a dad, a teacher, and a coach, then like the video and hit subscribe. We're going to be building a community of dads that actually want to be there for the kids with the dad hacks you need for the memories they'll keep. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.